the human mind does not have in its DNA a self-destructive pattern. It's the opposite, because it's made according to a divine principle, which is self-preservation and self-evolution, thriving. That's the DNA. That's the original human DNA. So if something is telling you to self-destruct, it didn't come from your original essence. It's as simple as that. It's an entity that's floating around in your space. Just like the solar flares affect your brains, they are messing with the energy. They're sending you the signals through the magnetic field into your brain channels.
Right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. Well, hello there, journeyers. Welcome back to Higher Journeys. And of course, if it's your first time here, we welcome you. I am always tickled pink when I have a dear friend on, and I do consider Ms. Caroline Cory, extraordinaire filmmaker, one of those individuals. And she is back to talk about something a little bit different. We're, of course, going to be talking about her landmark latest film, A Terror in the Sky, toward the end of the show. But today I want to talk about something that Caroline kind of put up on Facebook about a week or so ago, having to do with let's just call it noisy solar activity. I know a lot of you in the audience are familiar with coronal mass ejections, solar activity, geomagnetic storms, and how they may affect us, the collective, and as individuals. But particularly, Caroline, what I'd like to talk about today is how what we call now sensitives, otherwise known as empaths, may be faring through all of this noisy, shall we say, geomagnetic activity. So Caroline, first, let me welcome you. You know, she's on all the time, so we're just getting into the conversation, but let me formally welcome you back to Higher Journeys. Thank you, my dear, for joining us.
Hey, Alex. Thanks so much for having me. It's always fun to be on your show and talk about these things. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So here's the thing. You have to realize or remember that the solar flares, the solar activity affects the magnetic field of the planet. So the magnetic field obviously is wrapped around the planet, and we are inside that web, if you will. And our brain channels are actually connected, they're entangled with this web around us, and it's all magnetism, it's all electromagnetism. And so people who are very expanded have a kind of a wider range of magnetic field, and their brain channels reach actually higher. So higher and bigger. And so what this means is that if I am evolved and I'm sensitive, my brain channels are going to pretty much be able to tap into the larger magnetic field of the planet. So in other words, I'm getting more kind of connected. I'm getting more of the effect of that interference with the solar flares. So because we're talking about brain channels, then my physical brain is going to, it's as if somebody's like, moving you around. And so that's why it creates sometimes pressure, meaning strange headaches in weird places that you wouldn't have.
Absolutely.
Or especially dizziness. I mean, and it can just hit you all of a sudden. I mean, I have so many friends who tell me, I was doing fine, and all of a sudden, boom, I was like, I couldn't even stand up. What is that about? And of course, people get checked out and there's nothing wrong. So that's what happens. And it's very confusing, because it's like, what's going on?
Exactly.
You don't see a cause and effect.
Well, this is what I want. I'm going to actually quote you, because this is, again, what caught my attention, Journey, or she had put up an announcement. Basically, I think it was a Newsweek article that came out just a couple of weeks ago, and you put something up relative to that. And I'll quote you. You said, "Have you been feeling dizzy or having strange headaches and strong confusion/brain fog lately? This is typically due to strong solar flares hitting the Earth and affecting the magnetic field, which then interferes with our brain channels, especially for those who are sensitive and feeling the, quote, collective. Check out this information on geomagnetic storms for the month of July The 23rd of July, there was another big one. I can say now past tense. So for those who need it, intend for extra shielding to alleviate your symptoms. I want to get into that. So we're talking, obviously, we're recording this on August 1st. So this was a few days ago. But here's the deal, Caroline. I'm going to speak for myself and maybe get your way in, because I know a lot of the journeyers have been having this as well. Sustained ear buzzing. I used to call it white noise. I'm now calling it ear buzzing. The dizziness, the vertigo, along with strange dreams.
Yes.
And I also want to get into heightened paranormal activity. I don't want you to tackle all of that now, but I just thought I'd throw the kitchen sink at you. There's a lot going on. Why? And maybe even when we're not noisy in terms of the solar flares, it may not be. For instance, we just had this on the 23rd, but I'll give you an example. Today, my ears are screaming, guys, every other day for me, interestingly. Can you speak to that? This has been going on. People have been talking about this for a couple of years, few years, actually.
Yeah, different people feel it differently. And so I have friends who tell me it's mostly in their ears. It's muffled ears, and sometimes it's horrible ringing in the ears. And different people feel it as dizziness, so a little bit of nausea, because it's the same center in the brain. It's kind of like being on a boat, so it's that same feeling. And some people experience it more as headaches. So it's kind of all related to the same thing. It's just that different people are affected slightly differently depending on, their constitution. So for me, for example, sometimes my ears get muffled all of a sudden, but then it fades after a day, and but the dizziness, for example, could last for like 3 days, and but somebody else, it's the ears that would last for 3 days. So each person has a different physiological makeup, and will then attract the symptoms that is more kind of particular to them. But they're all related to the same phenomenon. So again, it's the same thing. What I was saying is that we are an electrical magnetic field. We are we are receiving magnetic signals and emitting signals. And so, I mean, that's a fact. You can research it. It's been shown and proven to be true. And so when you have magnetism that's all messed up around you, the part of your body that is maybe the most vulnerable, I want to say, is going to be the most targeted. And that's why the symptoms are slightly different.
If you would elaborate on that, say that again. If you would repeat that, because I want to really understand what you're saying. The part of your body that's more vulnerable.
Yes. Yes. So for example, how come some people have digestive problems? Some people have headaches. Some people have, I don't know, muscular things or connective tissue like arthritis and things like that. Why don't we all have the exact same problems?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ailment at the same time. It's because at that time, for example, my food intake or my nutrition is not great. And so, with years, with time, my digestive system is going to be more vulnerable than, let's say, my brain. Other people have headaches, migraine headaches, chronic migraine headaches, but don't have digestive problems, chronic digestive. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we all have a different makeup and different predisposition to certain vulnerable states.
Well, speaking of predisposition, we're focusing, Caroline, it's certainly not precluding those that may not consider themselves empathic, but particularly for those, I know a lot in our audience consider themselves to be very spiritually inclined, and oftentimes that will come with an ultra sensitivity to a lot of things, noise, colors, and now we're dealing with this bombardment, it seems, of not just solar activity. There's a lot going on, but let's focus on the empaths for a bit. You touched on it in the beginning of the show. Why? Can you go a little deeper into why empathic people? These are people that you would think this is more of a psychological makeup. and yet it's deeper than that. But why would we be more susceptible to more pronounced symptoms than someone that's not?
Yeah, again, it's because you are so expanded. I mean, when you do a meditation and you expand yourself, what is it that you're expanding? You're expanding your field. So, for example, psychics or, intuitive or people who do remote viewing, for example, they are tapping into information that is remote or communicating, with another entity or whatever. So it's because you are expanding the spectrum, that you can reach, whether it's a visual or auditory or sense, just your senses altogether. Instead of just being confined to the 3D spectrum, you've now expanded through meditation and through your practices. You've expanded your ability to reach for information. So it's not just psychological, it's actually physiological, because it's the part of the physiology we don't see, it's the energy field. So for example, when I'm expanded, my energy field is literally covering the entire galaxy. Think about that. So
Sure.
then and my brain channels are reaching the center of the galaxy, for example. So then when you ask me, can you channel an entity that's on the Pleiades? Now I can, because I'm in that state of consciousness where my energy field and my brain channels are reaching that far. So again, because we don't see it, like we don't see things, we don't see cables.
That's right. What we don't see.
So we
Yeah.
think like, oh, we just feel relaxed and expand. But actually you are. Your consciousness is not confined to your body, and it's actually all the way in space. And what is in space is more magnetism, is more, things moving around. So that's why it gets affected by, the stars. Of course, we talk about alignment, astronomical alignment, solar flares is just part of all of that, except that the flares, I mean, are kind of sudden. The sun is spitting out this strong energy. And so it's kind of like it's hitting you, and then it makes you wobbly. If your energy field is supposed to be stable and somebody just like throws something at you. So does that make sense? And
Absolutely.
so that's
Absolutely.
that's the reason why sensitives, folks are the most, they can feel it because they're everywhere. Their consciousness is everywhere, you see.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Having said that, not just the natural phenomena, so for example, I mean, in addition, that's the problem, is that in addition to the natural phenomena such as astronomical events and solar flares, you now have, for example, the chemtrails and the bombardment of frequency through AI. And so that's another problem. Sometimes, and these are the ones that affect most the ears, because the spectrum is closer to the hearing range. So I'm
Interesting.
telling you, sometimes I can literally see, the vibration of the, like the 5G or whatever. There's a lot more than 5G, to be honest. Then sometimes the interaction of all of these frequencies are going into the field, and so if your field is very expanded, then you're going to feel it a
You're
lot
susceptible.
worse.
Absolutely. Okay, now we're getting down to brass tacks, guys. We're going to be somewhat careful because of the venue that we're on, but we're going to say what we need to say. Let's get to the heart of the matter. As my audience and I have been off and on for the last 2.5 or so years talking about this, because I'll tell you, the buzzing, the white noise in the ears started for me back in February of 2020, out of the blue. I had just come back from Australia lecturing over there, and out of the blue, I remember standing in my kitchen going, "What is that noise?" And it's not tinnitus; it's a different sensation. And having done a little bit of research, I'm not adept at it, but knowing that we are undoubtedly being bombarded by all of these different frequencies, technologies, artificial intelligence increasing by the day, all of these synthetic interceptions, we'll call them, in addition to the planet doing what it's doing, the solar system doing what it's doing, oh my God, now we can see how these symptoms can be sustained. Because like I said, it's not just July 21st, this most recent, what they're calling the full halo, I think is what they called it, CME, coronal mass ejection. But it's, for me, every other day.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. So if it's not solar flare or some other, that's why I started to mention these things. So for example, for me, the chemtrails, I can literally like, it feels so heavy.
Mhm.
I feel like it total brain fog. And also when it's acting on your brain, it starts to affect your emotional
Of
system.
course.
So how many people suddenly out of the blue feel horribly depressed
Mhm.
and sad, and nothing happened specifically, but all of a sudden it's that feeling of being very heavy, not wanting to do anything. And also it could get to a point where it's like, I don't care what happens anymore. I'm done with this reality. Like really a sense of you can't take this anymore. And so I know a lot of people who get to that state
Mhm.
during those times, and then literally as soon as the sky clears up, you're like, you can breathe again and you feel normal again. I mean, literally in that moment.
Yeah.
So that's kind of strange. You can't tell me this is coincidence.
No,
And
it's
so,
absolutely not.
yeah.
Absolutely not. No.
And so that's why for you, for example, and those who, and I'm one of them, by the way, the fact that, you're conscious of these things doesn't mean you're immune. It just means you can deal with them better because we can share a few tools at the end. Um,
I
you
want
know,
to.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, for example, for you, one day you're gonna be hit by the solar flares, and then the next day it's usually the solar flares is over a few days anyway in terms of effect. But then you're gonna have this AI frequency stuff bombard you, and then it's something else, and then it's something else.
Yeah. It's
That's
intensified for
yeah,
sure. Yeah, really, really. The comment that you made about a lot of individuals are kind of feeling like ready to check out of this reality. I heard, I think it was Regina Meredith from Gaia, had a show. I don't know if it was on the main show or maybe on a part of her membership. In any case, I heard her having the discussion about, she was talking to some friends of hers who were very spiritually inclined, typically very upbeat, and
yeah,
feeling very despondent to the
yeah,
extent of, I want to get out of here. Not truly,
mm,
truly
yeah,
trying to do it, but feeling hopeless. And
yeah,
look, we know, guys, with all that's gone on, there's lots of reasons to um, maybe want to throw in the towel every now and again in the last couple of years. But you make a very good point. There's something in the atmosphere,
yeah.
coupled with our own sensitivity, coupled with our own bioelectric field, that is clearly responding to something that our bodies are not prepared for. If you're enjoying this episode, along with all of the subjects that we cover here on Higher Journeys, then I invite you to join our members only community on Patreon, where we go even deeper into the conversations with the guests that you know and love. Not only does your membership ensure that we can keep this work going and growing, but you'll also get immediate access to our exclusive after shows. Get up close and personal with the guests of the show, along with many other member perks. So click on the link below to join now, or visit higherjourneys.com where you'll find the Patreon link. We'll see you on the journey. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. That's why we should be talking about this because,
Mm.
people, if you're not clear on the root cause of what it is that's happening to you, then you can go in that circle like, oh my God, I'm depressed, and what's going on? And then you start to think that you are depressed, which you are, but the root cause is not because something's wrong with you, is because you're tapping your feeling all this collective energy and all this collective stuff that's happening on that day. And so that's the reason why it's good to kind of be reminded of these things. One of the kind of cue, if you will, like, that's so obvious, is when these things come on suddenly, when everything is fine, and then you just wake up out of the blue, feeling horribly depressed to the point of not wanting to do anything with your life anymore, not caring. So then, if you have been gradually coming to that point is one thing, but when it hits you suddenly, that is your cue that there's something wrong, that it kind of comes from another place. And so most of the time it is the collective. Like I said, sometimes it's AI, sometimes those frequency being bombarded with those frequencies into your brain, and sometimes it's interference. These are attachments, but they kind of all go together. And so that's kind of the problem.
They all go together. And I think it's, people have a tendency to want to assign blame or the cause as being one thing when it's a multitude of things. Bombardment is definitely an understatement. Well, I want to, there's several areas I want to touch on, but I think right now let's touch on um, how we might mitigate some of these effects. Now, as you mentioned, the first is to be aware of what's going on and how it's happening and why it's happening. If nothing else, just to calm you down psychologically, because it can just the, people are running to the doctor and invariably they're finding nothing most of the time. And but so we know that we now we have the framework for here's what's going on, but are there other action steps that we can take even beyond meditation, which I absolutely advocate? But what are some of the things that you might suggest people can physically do?
Yeah, and also another symptom we didn't talk about that happens to me quite often and to other people is heart palpitation or
That's right.
tightness in the chest. Because like, oh my God, what's happening? Because it's the heart and what's going on. And so that's another thing that gets scary. So that's the idea, is to first of all rule out it's not you, but you can do that very quickly. I mean, you can get checked out or something just to make sure. And also, is there any reason for you to all of a sudden have these things, So that's that. But once you've done that, the first thing that I recommend, like I just said earlier, is to be aware that it has nothing to do with you. When it comes on suddenly, that tell you there's something wrong. I noticed that what helps a lot is to lie down, like to not move, because it's almost like somebody's moving you, somebody's like messing with your energy. So if you're trying, like, let's say if you work out or if you take a walk, you're kind of like adding to the imbalance and to the stress. So I feel like if you are lying down, it's almost like this stuff kind of goes through you and past you much faster. So if you have the ability to just kind of stop what you're doing physically, that's helpful. The second thing, of course, when you are in this space, is just to meditate and to try to get it past you very, very quickly. Again, it doesn't mean you're absorbing it. It just means that whatever is happening in my field, I just wanted to kind of brush off and go away, kind of in an effortless way. But also, shield as much as you can. So, of course, you can just visualize a bubble around you, that the stuff, whatever is coming in, is bouncing off of the bubble. I have this meditation on my website, Connecting to Source. It's free. People can do that. And it's, again, it's creating this alignment that helps you raise your vibration. But the biggest thing is your mental state, is to really realize that it's not you, it's just part of what's happening, and it's going to pass. It is going to pass. And to just sit with that intention in your heart, that allow it to pass very quickly, and for you to return to balance. And just kind of keep saying these things will comfort you, as opposed to throw you into a loop like, oh my God, what's happening?
Right. Which would certainly exacerbate the symptoms, I would imagine. Well, it's interesting you should mention intending
Yeah.
that you're going to get through this and come out of the other end whole and healthy. Lynn McTaggart, I'm sure you're familiar with Lynn McTaggart's great work and her intention experiment. And I remember quite a few years ago when intention experiment first came out, she talked about geomagnetic activity
Yeah.
during when she was doing the experiment with the group. And she noticed a pattern that, now this is where I was trying to find it today, where When it's noisy, she refers to it as being noisy. Solar activity is noisy. We are more inclined, I hope I'm getting this right, to receive. Our receiving channel tends to be stronger, which would kind of make sense to me. I hope I'm right. And when it's quiet, our sending channel, meaning intending at that time when it appears to be quiet, or when the geomagnetic activity is lessened. I Correct me if I'm wrong, because I want to really elaborate on that. That was
Yeah,
powerful information.
yeah, I know Lynn's work. She's amazing.
She is.
I'm not sure if it's specific to receiving and sending. I think things get harder to, when there's activity, regardless whether you're receiving or emitting. In my
Mm-hmm.
personal opinion. Also, another thing to remember: it's not just your energy field and your magnetic field, it's also the geometry itself. You have to think about the physical body is a geometric shape, is a geometric structure that fits within a larger, your energy field is a coherent geometric shape. It has a shape. So does everyone else. So does the planet, you see. So does the solar system. So does the galaxy. So does
Right.
the universe. And so if you start to think about it this way, it's kind of like the Russian doll. The small doll fits in a bigger doll and a bigger doll.
Right.
So when things are in perfect stillness, the smaller geometry is in perfect alignment. It's almost like all the entry and the exit points, whether you're receiving or emitting, are all the pathways are perfectly open.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter. It's more of your intention that you are either receiving or sending. Although sometimes you try to receive guidance and it's coming in choppy.
It can be very
Yeah.
difficult. Yeah,
And other
absolutely.
days you ask for guidance and boom, it just comes super clear.
Right.
Why? What
Why? That's a very
happened?
good point.
Why on Monday, I can get a very clear, super strong answer to something. And then the next day it's like, what? Say that again. So it's not like something's wrong with you. It's like all energy is moving. Everything is moving, moving, moving. So that's why you have to kind of catch, or at least try. That's the idea of the meditation. Align the 0 points within your geometry with the larger geometry. So when the larger geometry is a mess, it's hard for you to be in balance and to receive anything or send anything. That's my personal opinion. I think it works in both ways.
Yeah. No, I understand. I've heard others talk about the sheer difficulty when I use a term like Lynn, noisy. It
Yeah.
can be difficult, perhaps on both sides. But I do remember specifically during her experiment, she talked about ascending and receiving and ideal conditions for one channel versus the other. So in any case, I think, the bottom line, what I'm picking up from this is great, by the way. I hope you guys are enjoying it, is to take notice of, on those days where things seem to be in synchronicity, or you feel like your receiving channel is very strong, to maybe make note, do a little bit of research and see where we are. Was it noisy today? Was it extremely quiet today? What may have been going on in my surroundings? So it can be replicated if possible. So we know what days we should be really focusing on intending and or receiving, right?
Yeah, except that, some things that are global, again, whether it's AI hitting us with
That's
weird
true.
frequency, you know what I mean? Like that's beyond our, but also strangely enough, the weather itself, not that when it's dark, it's depressing and when it's sunny, you feel good. No, I mean, a little bit beyond that.
Yeah.
The actual, again, magnetism in the air when, it's cloudy versus something else. There's all kinds of chemistry in the atmosphere that literally affects you physiologically, more again than just being depressed when it's rainy. So in other words, your entire mechanism starts to be affected. So for those who are sensitive, and I'm not saying everybody should move to a place that's always sunny, because even in places that are sunny, There are other things in the air, in
No
the
question.
atmosphere. You see
To
what I
say
mean?
the least, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot, I mean, it's like, where do you, how do you even survive? It's like, it's exhausting. And again, I'm not like, I struggle with this myself. I have days I just can't function,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been doing
Absolutely.
this my whole life. So I have all the tools, possible. But I know now that if I just lie down, during those few hours or whatever, it goes away. I mean, eventually it'll pass. And also, so having that clarity helps a lot. And so, because we're dealing with a lot, we're
Mm-hmm.
dealing, and we're dealing, in addition to the astronomical events and the and the artificial ones, we also have the collective consciousness.
Absolutely.
What people are putting out there, the new laws, without going into the politics, that get the things, the news, the way people are, some mall shooting or this or that, how people are reacting. And we know from the random number generator experiments, we know that the collective consciousness has an effect.
Absolutely. No question. So you can only imagine those that are sensitive who have a propensity to tie into that collective unwittingly, we should say, can only imagine when the collective is really in a tizzy, what it does for sensitives. So, or what it does to sensitives, I should say. Really, really fascinating stuff. Yeah, we know there's a lot going on, and we're at an unprecedented time with an unprecedented number of things happening at once. So we really have to kind of live on the offensive and protect ourselves. Let's spend a little bit of time looking at the clock because Caroline has a hard stop today. So and by the way, we are going to Patreon. She has a hard stop, but I'm not letting her go until we go to Patreon. So after show's coming up, so stick with us. But as we round out this conversation, I want to touch on sticking with the geomagnetic activity being unprecedented of late and some of the phenomena, anomalies, high strangeness that have also been reported across the board, even just UFO sightings. For us, it's just UFO sightings, but not just that, maybe even abductions. All manner of anomaly seems to be intensified during these times. Tell me what you know on that, Caroline.
To be honest, I don't know if it's really intensified only in those times. I just feel that people are more aware, more conscious. It's kind of like they notice more things. I think these things are happening all the time. It's more, our propensity, we're kind of more open to noticing these things because we are in this strange state. We're not in this typical, like, mundane or whatever routine. And so I feel it's more about that. That's my personal opinion. But if you're asking if things have accelerated recently, again, I feel like it's more the general awareness that these things are happening, have happened, continue to happen, that is giving it a momentum. It's giving it more, that it's real, and it's becoming more and more real. And the more the collective puts its attention on it, the more we hear about new stuff coming up. So that's my take on it. I
That's
think
an
this,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I've heard people say that. I don't know. The jury's out as far as I'm concerned as to what came first, the chicken or the egg. But the bottom line is, you made a very good point. Even if it's just not an accelerated amount of activity, but the awareness has
Yes.
accelerated, will actually trigger more activity.
Yes.
Did I hear you right?
Correct.
Ah,
Yes, because
that's
what happens is that, don't forget, it's not believe seeing is believing. It's more believing is seeing.
mhm.
So the more you put out the energy or the belief that you're starting to believe that there is something strange going on, you are convinced, you don't know what it is, but you're a lot more open, the more you invite it in. And so people who are not clear on this, how do you create? Is it get created? Was it already there? So you have to realize that as a potential, of course, it's already there. But the more you believe, the more you attract.
Absolutely.
You attract it. So it's not like you made it up or you make it appear. It was already there in
Mhm.
the world of probability, meaning the potential, of it being there. And so that's why the more you believe, the more your vibration is saying, I know it's there, I know it's there, which is a specific frequency, versus I don't believe it's there. So that frequency is closer to physical manifestation.
Sure.
Does that make sense? So whatever's here is not going to show up down here. But as soon as you're speaking at this level, that is the physical manifestation, which is 1100 hertz. And so when you're constantly vibrating there, then you invite the matching frequency.
Of
And that's
course.
why things materialize more.
I absolutely agree. But I'm going to play a little devil's advocate. I agree with you. I think you're absolutely spot on. However, how would we account for, now I know for me, I have talked to quite a few folks who are not of this ilk, if you will, believing or disbelieving, not even thinking about it, that are being suddenly hit with activity of all kinds. And I'm not talking about physical symptoms, I'm talking about visits,
Yeah, yeah.
whether it,
So
so,
yeah, it's, I mean, that's the same answer to many people who
mhm.
are like in a completely different career, not even paying attention to anything paranormal or anything like that. And all of a sudden they have this near death experience or something crazy. And so to me that still has to do with the individual, kind of on a subconscious level. They may have said, I don't believe in this, so I'm not going there. But on a subconscious level, a part of them, is wanting to know. So that's the problem. We don't know how we create. The conscious mind says, I want to create an experience. The subconscious mind is saying, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. So those people or it would be too scary or whatever. So those people will not create anything because the conscious mind is saying one thing, the subconscious is saying the opposite. Now, there are people, it's the exact opposite. Consciously, they're saying, no, no, I don't believe it. But subconsciously, they're saying, well, what if? If I have a physical visitation, I will believe. Do you see what I'm saying? And so they keep going back and forth, back and forth. Eventually, the subconscious mind, you see what I mean?
Mhm.
Eventually, they create according to what they thought was impossible because consciously they weren't aware that a part of them really, really, really wanted to have that
I
experience.
think there are probably many more of those. That's my surmise. If we could only, I was just having this thought the other day, Caroline, if we could only bring our subconscious into alignment with our conscious mind, so much of what we go through, we wouldn't have to. If we could bring about at least an equilibrium, even be aware of the subconscious reality that is a part of us. That's a big subject for me. Another subject for another time. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I've developed a whole methodology. My energy medicine methodology is all based on that. Because once you bring up what's in your subconscious, then you know what's been blocking you. That's the root cause of all the problems. And so, but for those who are interested can look into it. But even as a general rule, to know what's in your subconscious mind, you do have to get yourself into a meditative state and just intend for your subconscious thoughts to become conscious.
Mm.
Every day, of course, if you want more of a protocol, and people can study the methodology and stuff like that. But even as a daily thing, like for example, I want to, I don't know, sell my new book or something, whatever. Or I want to create abundance or relationships or whatever. So as you are saying that in the morning, setting your intention for the day, you can also intend and say, I know there must be some subconscious blocks specific to that intention. I mean, be specific. Don't make it your whole life. Just one thing. write a book, attract a relationship, buy a house, whatever, So then focus on this one and say, show me, let me feel, see, sense the subconscious blocks that are stopping me, preventing me from this particular manifestation. And so you start to feel things, if you sit with it without, again, following a very specific protocol, ask to feel, see, sense these things and just sit with it. You'd be surprised. You may start to have visions of something that happened when you were younger. You may feel, for example, I don't know what's going on, but I see my mother show up. What's that about? What does she have to do with me writing a book? You see what I mean?
I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. You start to feel, you bring up stuff that you think has nothing to do with it, and don't dismiss it. Go with it, because that you just ask the question, show me stuff that's subconscious. It means it's not going to make sense. It's doing its own thing in the background. And so if I see, again, let's pretend I see my mother out of nowhere, and I start to, well, what does she have to do with me writing a book? I start to feel judged, for example.
I
start to feel anger coming from her, for example. You start to have the experience that became a subconscious block.
I got it.
I love it. You clear it, and then you breathe it out of your cells, and then you say again, I want to write a book. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're really asking for two things. You're intending for whatever goal you're trying to achieve, but you're also inviting the subconscious to come in, assuming that in 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10, there is a subconscious counter thought that needs to be addressed, particularly if you've been intending for a long time and nothing's coming to fruition. So, but you just want to make sure that it's not noisy, geomagnetically noisy. I'm being a bit facetious when you're intending.
Yeah, exactly.
Make sure the conditions are right.
No, and that's the reason why there's a protocol. That's what I'm saying. Like, for example, the protocol walks you very specifically, to a specific state of consciousness. How do you know it's you? How do you know you didn't project? How do you know it's your subconscious? All this discernment, all this clarity. So that's what I was saying. Like, if you're serious about it, you follow a specific protocol until you get it, until you get so used to recognizing, okay, this was noise. This isn't me. This is not my spirit guide. It's some weird stuff going on. And so that, because there's a lot of that.
I want to talk about it. We got to talk about it. I'm sorry not to let you go. You just hit something big time.
Yeah.
Voices in the head.
Yeah.
This is something you just serendipitously hit on, something that is connected to all that we've been talking about today.
For sure.
Thought, streams of consciousness, voices in the head that seem, and I'm going to get really serious here. Some people have reported voices saying, do something to yourself to harm you.
Yeah.
That extreme, guys. You may have heard of it. Let's talk about that too. This all goes in with the package of the crap that so many people are navigating right now. Where are those quote voices or thoughts, streams of thoughts coming from?
Yeah, again, that's the first thing that I worked on, because I used to hear, see, sense stuff since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing was, well, how do I know I didn't make this up? How do I know I'm not crazy? How do you know? And especially when you are working with someone and you see the root cause of like their cancer or something really serious. And then I felt a huge responsibility to be talking about these things. And I wanted to make sure that I was discerning it for myself, that it wasn't any part of me, subconscious or otherwise, that wasn't projecting. And so because of that, that's why it took me a long time to create a protocol for discernment. Because in your thoughts, because we're not trained to master our mind, we're not trained, nobody teaches us about the subconscious and what's going on. So we have many thoughts and many things generated in our brains. So you have the conscious thoughts. For example, right now, I'm consciously intending to speak, to deliver my message. At the same time, I have conscious thoughts that are still sitting in the background. But I could also, on a day, I'm talking as in general, on a daily basis, there's also a mind chatter of what happened this morning or what's going to happen in an hour when I have this meeting or when I go to lunch or this and that. And sometimes it could be very simple, and that's you. That's still your that's still your conscious mind projecting in a past, present, future constantly. On top of that, you are still connected to your guidance. So you have your guides trying to tell you, kind of keep guiding you on what to do today to keep you on your higher purpose. But you are so chit-chatting all the time with yourself that normally you don't hear those voices. In addition to this, you have the beings that are trying to mess with you. And so you have a lower vibration when, especially when with alcohol and drugs, when you are not in full mastery of your brain. This is where those beings come in, and they see that they're going to, they find your specific fears. And they're going to literally kind of they're inside. It's going to feel like it's inside your brain, and they start to tell you things that obviously are dark or evil or harmful. I mean, obviously, the human mind does not have in its DNA a self-destructive pattern. It's the opposite, because it's made according to a divine principle, which is self-preservation and self-evolution, thriving. That's the DNA. That's the original human DNA. So if something is telling you to self-destruct, it didn't come from your original essence. It's as simple as that. It's an entity that's floating around in your space. Just like the solar flares affect your brains, they are messing with the energy. They're sending you the signals through the magnetic field into your brain channels.
Makes a lot of sense. Well,
mental illness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm pausing, guys, because this could take us down a rabbit hole that we're not going to have time to get into. Maybe we can get into this a little bit more in the after show. How about that? Because I know we're going to need to wrap this up. Oh my God. That's what we're going to do. We're going to the after show. We're going to take this part of the conversation. I think it's more appropriate for there anyway. So please do join us over there. But we're not going to go yet. We got a few more minutes. Speaking of Patreon, I want to pose a question from one of our patrons, David Lyell, who is a love, and he's been very active in our community. He says, greetings to you, Caroline. Greetings, Alexis. He has a two-part question for you, Caroline. The first question is, did you receive any downloads during your meditations when you were filming A Tear in the Sky? If so, were the downloads a jump ahead into the present day of where we are as empaths? Does that make sense?
Yeah, when I was filming A Tear in the Sky, and even in pre-production, I was relying a little bit on the downloads, because I was surrounded by, scientists and a group of people who didn't believe in it and didn't want to go there. And for me, it's a natural process. So during the film, and for the sake of the film, I wanted to make sure we were going to make in contact with something, capture something, because it was a huge production. It was a huge expense, a huge preparation. I mean, it was so much work. And so I was kind of reaching out and asking for these downloads. And the first download that I got was a date. It was July 14th. Something was going to happen July 14th. And that's exactly what happened. The first, we set up there from July 12th to the 16th, and nothing happened the first 2 days. And the first capture was on July 14th. So I know, and in fact, through the process, I kept getting the different downloads, including, by the way, the title itself.
Yeah, we
I
talked about that.
called A Tear in the Sky 2 years ago. So, and I knew that was going to be the title. And sure enough, for those who watched the movie, we end up capturing on camera a tear, a wormhole
I know.
type. So things like that would happen all the time.
Wow, that's
But
great.
his question about empath, I didn't get.
Do you want me to repeat that? Um,
Did I get a download
did
specific?
you receive any downloads during your meditations when you were filming A Tear in the Sky? And if so, were those downloads? I think he's saying, did they include a jump ahead into the present day of where we are as sensitives, as empaths? Anything included there?
It was during the filming, it was mostly about the filming and the outcome and where this was going, because I really went into it pretty blindly from a conscious point of, from a
Mhm.
3D, let's say. So during the filming, it was more about that and the impact it was going to have or should have, and how it was contributing to the overall disclosure and bringing the truth to
Mhm.
the planet. So it was more about along those lines during the filming. But of
Okay.
course, I mean, I meditate every day. It's part of my work. And so I get every day all sorts of information
Mhm.
about the empath. And that's everything that I'm telling you right now, because it doesn't make sense that I'm perfectly healthy. So is everybody else. I mean, a lot of people, and to all of a sudden be totally destabilized to the point of not being able to function. So when things like this happen, I have to stop and really, really understand what is the root
What's
cause,
going
what's
on?
going on. This
Right.
is just not normal behavior, And so that's how I know about all of this stuff. I can see it. I can see how the collective moves. Now I get all of these downloads and I understand it on a deep cellular level that I can discern it pretty quickly.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
now it's this going on, or now it's that going on.
Right. And you need to do that. You really need to dedicate yourself because it can be so confusing and you think you may know what the impetus is and it's not. So I appreciate that. And I hope a lot of you guys listening will maybe investigate a little bit more like Caroline has done. So look, I tell you what I'm going to do because we're running out of time. I'm going to take David had a second question. I'm going to take that as well over to the after show because I know he'll be listening over there. And again, I'm inviting all of you to come on over. It's a great way to support Higher Journeys to keep us going and growing. And yeah, we've got a great catalog, including more after shows with Caroline because she's been on 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know how many times now, but she's a regular at this point. So please join us over there. Caroline, like Tear in the Sky, guys, this girl is tearing it up. I mean, every time I turn around, there's another accolade being bestowed upon this great film of yours. What's the latest happening there? And then lastly, tell us where people can find it.
Yeah, it's been doing fantastic. I mean, just people should just keep supporting. I feel like more and more people are supporting, which is what we need, because the idea of this film is to also be able to bridge to the gap with the mainstream. And so the more people post, good reviews and things, the more it encourages people who are not familiar with the subject to kind of open up to it and to get educated on how we made this film in a scientific way and what we've discovered. And I don't know if I told you actually the latest, probably not, but since the film, for those who have not watched it, you have to watch it. At the end, we literally discover an opening and closing that none of the scientists can figure out. Since the film was finished, the scientists continue to investigate, talking to many other scientists. What could this be? Nobody has to date a plausible explanation for this phenomenon, an
Mhm.
opening and closing with a bunch of little objects
Mhm.
coming out of it. So
And no one has seen something like this since, Caroline?
no one has seen, no. And also, no, like even if it's an atmospheric, maybe it's not a portal, we don't know. Even if it's an atmospheric thing, not one scientist is able to tell us, oh yeah, we've seen this when blah blah blah, or in outer space. And nobody can do this to date after the film's been out for 3 months now. And we have filed a request to, through the Freedom of Information Act, trying to get satellite images. Long story short, just to get more data on that particular phenomenon. Long story short, basically it's rejected because it's classified.
Oh.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly.
The plot thickens, guys.
Exactly.
Wow.
Because why? Okay, so I mean, maybe they're doing some military thing, whatever. Maybe it's related, maybe it's not related. But that particular incident in that location, those coordinates and that time, they told us it's classified. So whether it's related or not, there's something going on there.
There's something going on.
And
if
we
it was
captured
rejected,
it.
a FOIA.
We captured it on camera. I mean, in a phenomenal way. You have to see this film.
You have to see the film. Of course, we'll have a link. You got to see it.
Yeah. Eterinthesky.com probably is the best. Eterinthesky.com.
Got it.
Or
I'll
on
make sure to put it on
Amazon.
the screen as well. Caroline, thank you. Woo, this was packed, chock full. This is one of those shows you're going to have to watch, I should say. And some of you that in the podcast community listening to again and again and again, because there was a lot of stuff in there. Caroline, you never disappoint, girl. You never disappoint, my friend. I'm so appreciative of you. Thank you for your wisdom as always. And keep it up. Keep the discovery going. That's what we're here for.
Thanks so much. This was awesome. Thanks.
This is great. And we're going to see you all next door, I hope, for the Patreon after show. Coming right up. All right, guys. Thanks so much. I love you. Talk to you soon. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to watch what's next, plus more to explore. And don't forget to subscribe to Higher Journeys.